Well, Catherine Swift is so humble. She was my boss back in the day, and I couldn't have had a better boss, actually, learning about all of the issues of business, and it served me well. I was telling the earlier round table that my career has cycled through different careers. I go into politics and get fired, and then I go into the media and then business advocacy, then I go into politics and get fired, and then go into media and business advocacy again. So here I am in politics, so I guess we all know where this is going, right? I'm hoping it turns out better this time around, since I did have 2 runs at politics that didn't turn out particularly well. Well, thank you for your encouragement. Thank you. And I do want to thank Catherine and Jocelyn and the board of the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses of Canada for kindly inviting me today for presenting me with this award. I had many opportunities to collaborate with Jocelyn in my last role with the Alberta Enterprise Group and learn about the priorities of the group and how we made a terrible error in allowing the federal government to take over the regulation of plastics by declaring them toxic. So I'm doing what I can to be able to roll that back. I'm happy to talk to you one-on-one. There's 1,000 things I could talk about today, but let me also just acknowledge Roman Baber, who I had a chance to interview in my former life when I was in journalism. I think he's done an amazing job of standing up for freedom, and I thank you for that. And Jamil Javani, who I think is taking on a really big and important battle of trying to keep the media honest. When I was in media, it was fair, accurate, and balanced, and we need to get back to that. So thank you for the work that you do. And to the Treasury Board Minister, Prabhat Sarkaria, please apologize to your Premier Doug Ford for our Alberta is Calling campaign. It's so successful that you don't need to worry, Anthony Furey, if you do your worship, I hope I to call you that one day, about banning those ads in the subway. We're not doing the ads in the Toronto subway anymore. We're just doing radio ads, so. And I did say that I told Doug I had a little bit of a loophole here because he told me he was really upset about those ads when I first met him. And I said, don't worry, we're only going to be advertising in high unemployment areas. And I guess that includes Hamilton and Windsor and London as well. But we're not going to be advertising in Toronto at least. But we are grateful for the number of people who are taking a second look at Alberta. I'm grateful to the people in this room who care so much about what is happening in our great province. Before I get to anything else, let me just give you a great big thank you for highlighting to Ontario and Canada that Canadian businesses understand energy issues. That you know the real risks that Canada is facing of energy poverty if governments get policy decisions over the next few months and years wrong. And I know Dan McTeague has done such incredible work on that. And I'm looking forward to continuing watching your work over the years, because that's going to be a very big issue that we have in Alberta. I want to also thank you for being a group of leaders in your communities who believe in free enterprise, who believe in making Canada better, and who believe and understand that a strong and prosperous Canada needs a strong and prosperous Alberta. I might need a drink of water if somebody's able to bring me some water up here. And as an Albertan, I want to thank you for taking leadership to let Canadians know that Canadian manufacturers care and are concerned about Canada, and they want our country to be better. And I also want to thank you for the Game Changer Award. I'm not sure that I deserve it. I've actually only been Premier for about 5 months, so I don't know if I deserve it yet. I kind of think we're still in the middle of the game, and I do want to change things, but there is still a lot of this game left to play, and I am hoping to get 4 more years, because if you like what I've done in the last 5 months, you won't believe what I'll be able to do with 5 years. I'm honored to be recognized for my willingness to stand by fundamental conservative values and principles and to oppose prevailing trends of big government, high taxes, and other so-called progressive policies, and I'm proud to wear that mantle. I think conservative principles reflect the facts of life. I think conservatives that espouse governments that espouse conservative principles in the long run create more prosperity and opportunity for everyone else. And as Premier, I'm committed to striking the right balance between free enterprise, individual freedom, and the work of government. And it's been my goal since day one to make Alberta a better place to live, to enable opportunities for Alberta businesses, to attract investment from Canada and around the world, and to create prosperity for every Albertan. I think the way to do that is to reject big government and high taxes. I think we need systems that do not have governments picking winners and losers. And I'm proud to leave a province where, as much as possible, government tries to get out of the way. Now, in today's day and age, I think there's still a place for some thoughtful government assistance, and when it makes sense, we do step up to help close deals, to fine-tune regulation, and to provide support that leads to giving a break to job creators to do their thing. I was telling the group earlier today that I met with, that I tend to like broad-based tax incentives so that everybody has an opportunity, where you have an Alberta Petroleum Incentive Program, where we do give a tax break on investments in the petrochemical sector. We announced in our budget that we are expanding that out to include carbon capture utilization and storage infrastructure, which I think will be important to building out our hydrogen economy. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to do, is make those kinds of options available to everyone who wants to invest. As opposed to when you do direct subsidies, you tend to give the money to the person who has the best lobbyist. And I tend to like to make sure that we're giving some support to those who have the best idea. In Alberta, we've made investments in a wide range of industries, from energy to agriculture, tourism to tech innovation. Our strong economy, quality of life, abundant opportunities, housing affordability. Sorry, I don't mean to rub that in, Minister, but housing affordability are encouraging people from across Canada and around the world to make Alberta their home. Our province offers low taxes and a skilled workforce, and businesses are choosing Alberta as their destination of choice to invest. And as a free enterprise conservative, I see that government's role is to create a positive and supportive environment for economic growth. When we do our job and create that supportive environment, then business people like you can do what you do best, which is to create opportunities that build prosperity and provide good jobs that support families and pay mortgages and buy groceries. That partnership between government and the private sector is reinforced with every thoughtful government investment, every cut to red tape, every job training program, and every time we stand up against federal interference in our economy. Getting economic policy right allows for investments in healthcare and social policies. It allows for government to foster a society that cares and can help the vulnerable and those in need. Now, I'm not quite sure why I got this Game Changer Award, but I want to just maybe pause for a minute and tell you, before I get into some of the national threats to Alberta's prosperity, because I'm sure some of you are wondering about why I passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, and I will get into that. But I do think that if I ever am invited back here, the things that I think are game-changing in Alberta is the approach that we're taking to social policy. Because I think for too long, Conservatives have run away from social policies. I noticed this when I got elected. It's like we say, okay, well, we'll cut taxes, cut red tape, build the economy, generate a lot of revenue, and then we'll hand the money over to a bunch of socialists to determine how to spend it. And we never develop a vision for how we're going to deliver programs our own way. And if I can be a game changer in this way, that is what I hope to do. Because if you heard me at Canada Strong and Free today, you'll know that we embarked, crazily enough, on a major health reform agenda, which is a bit crazy 6 months out from an election for a Conservative government to do. But I was facing, when I got elected, I was reading stories about 29-hour waits in emergency rooms. I was reading stories about people languishing in the back of an ambulance for not only one shift of a paramedic, but 2 shifts. I was reading about people who've been waiting for 4 years for knee and hip replacement. And I just thought, this is unacceptable. We've got to be able to do better than this. So I fired the board, or I fired the entire Chief Medical Officer of Health office. Yeah, they needed it. And I dismissed the Board of Alberta Health Services and put in an official administrator. And you know, an amazing thing happens when you chop off a few heads. It kind of clarifies things for the administration. And so with the Premier aligned with the Minister, and the Minister aligned with the official administrator, or the Health Minister and the official administrator, we were able to give some pretty clear direction to our executive team. And I'm pleased to report that we are already, just 4 months in, seeing major improvement. One of the things that you would probably observe in healthcare is that what has happened is, and this is the nature of the problem, we have a number of beds that are taken up with people who should be in long-term care. And so when that happens, it backs people up into acute care, and then acute care backs up into the emergency room, and then the emergency room backs up into the hallway, and then the hallway medicine backs up into the back of ambulances. That is the nature of the problem. You've got to improve that flow. So we started by figuring out a way to get those long-term care patients into an appropriate facility that frees up beds. And then we hired 114 nurses to be the offload at the intake at hospitals. And now when an ambulance shows up, they're able to do their drop-off, do their patient transfer, clean their kit and gear, and get back on the road. And they're able to do it in less than 45 minutes. And we intend to be able to have a success in being able to announce that we're doing this by the end of March. That is how quickly we were able to make change. And I can tell you, I have a dear friend who's a paramedic. I used to joke the reason I was doing this is because otherwise I wouldn't get invited to family dinner if I didn't fix it. And he told me before that he used to be able to do overtime at will, that he used to be able to have so many overtime shifts because the system wasn't working. Now overtime shifts are in pretty short supply because the system's working. He did end up getting parked one time last week when he went to a hospital. And as soon as the supervisor saw him, he said, "What are you doing here?" And he found a way to get him out on the road back in 20 minutes. So we can make change. This is the thing. Our ideas are better. That's the reason we can make change. And one of the things that has always frustrated me is why don't we apply our conservative values to the delivery of public services? We believe it's true. We believe in free enterprise and choice and competition and funding following patients or clients and innovation and pilot projects. And if we start doing these kinds of things, it'll be transformational and we will be able to run on our record on healthcare and other social programs. Let me just say one more because I hope that we get a Game Changer Award in future for the work that we're doing on mental health and addiction. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's going to be called being called the Alberta model. And I have my chief of staff, when I got into government, I hired him on as my chief. But I had been working with a group called the Alberta Adolescent Recovery Center, and they had an inpatient peer support program for kids who succumb to addiction. When I met Marshall Smith, I found out that he was doing the very same thing for adults in our province. And I said to him, "Where have you been all my life?" Because I think every one of us probably have a family member who has succumbed to mental health or addiction. I know I did. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen to any other family. My uncle died at age 55 on the streets after having mental health and addiction for his whole adult life. And one of the things that Marshall, you should know about him, is he lived in Vancouver he was in the Campbell government. And he ended up succumbing to addiction. He spent 4.5 years on the streets in Vancouver East Side, which is probably one of the toughest places in Alberta to be. And out of that, he met a friendly neighborhood cop who said to him, "You're either going to jail for a long time or you're going into recovery." So he chose recovery. And he went through addiction treatment. 35 days later, he was clean, and he's been 17 years sober, and now he is paying it forward. Yeah, he's pretty amazing. And I know that your mental health minister came out to our recovery conference, and so you're going to be hopefully seeing the same thing. But we're 4 years into an 8-year program. This is why I need to win another 4 more years. But just to give you a taste of what it is that we're doing, is we are building recovery communities. We have taken all the fees off of anybody who wants to have access to an addiction treatment publicly funded bed. They used to be $40 per day. So now we're allowing people to get into these programs. We used to have 19,000 people we could treat. Now it's 39,000 people that we can treat. And the recovery community is a very simple model. It's built like a dormitory. If you've ever went to university, you'll remember what the dorms were like. We've got 50 beds on the male side, 25 beds on the female side. People are going to learn how to shop. They're going to learn how to cook. They're going to learn how to do basic chores around the place. They're going to take care of the place. And in the morning, they're going to do intensive therapy. And in the afternoon, they do the chores and vice versa. And by the end of it, whether it takes a month or 6 months or a year, we're going to rebuild their capacity. It's called the recovery-oriented system of care. We're going to reconnect them with their family, reconnect them with their communities, connect them with the job, build the wraparound supports so they can go back to having individual agency and living independent, productive lives. And I can tell you the first group that we hired to lead our recovery community in Red Deer, they have a 75 to 85% success rate on recovery. And it's going to be remarkable, but this is fundamentally conservative because we know what the left do. Look at the wreckage up and down the West Coast. That is what the left's policies do, where they give up on people. They think, you can't recover, we'll just keep you alive, we'll sustain you, we'll give you a safe supply, we'll give you a safe consumption site, we'll let you set up your tent city, we'll let you do open air drug use. Look at what has happened up and down the West Coast. It's a failed policy. We're doing something different. That's why I feel so strongly that we apply our conservative values to social programs and social policy, and we are going to win every time because we have got better ideas. So that may not be why, truly, it is. So that may not be why I got the Game Changer Award, but just keep an eye on those things, because that's what we're trying to do in Alberta. But let me just talk a little bit, because I know you're interested in whether I'm trying to split the country up. So let me talk a little bit about what we're trying to do there. Alberta's prosperity, I believe, helps Canada invest in things that matter to Canadians. When it comes to paying taxes, Alberta and Alberta businesses punch above their weight. For generations now, Alberta has been a huge net contributor to federal coffers. It was mentioned earlier. Let me put a number on it for you. We've sent almost $700 billion more to Ottawa than we received back in federal programs and services. $700 billion. That number in and of itself is obviously problematic. But what deeply concerns us is that there seems to be a growing belief in some parts of the country and in some elements of the Trudeau government that Canada should just phase out Alberta's energy industry. They've called it the just transition. That very industry that makes Alberta a huge net contributor to Canada's prosperity. It's one thing to pay a disproportionate share of federal taxes. It's another thing when federal policy is a direct threat to our ability to generate wealth that pays those taxes. I've sometimes joked that I actually might have preferred Pierre Elliott Trudeau of the two Trudeaus, because at least he wanted to just steal our wealth, as opposed to this current Trudeau who seems to want to eliminate it altogether. Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan has been rightly fuming about this, and I've been fuming right along with him. This policy seems designed to hurt our energy industry and the two major energy-producing provinces. How it's been done is disrespectful. It has Premier Moe very upset. It has my government very upset. And that's why Premier Moe's government passed the Saskatchewan First Act, and it's why my government passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within the United Canada Act. These are reasonable laws that are built around respecting jurisdictional differences that are written into Canada's Constitution. The provinces, it's a bit of an education for the Eastern media, because they did a massive freakout when I put forward this policy. But one of the things that they need to understand is that the provinces are not junior partners in Confederation. We are co-equals with the federal government. We have areas where we are sovereign, and they have areas that they are sovereign. And we also have areas where we have shared jurisdiction. These are not new things. This is the way Canadians have understood our system of government for decades and decades. And yet when Alberta and Saskatchewan raise issues, the chattering classes and the Ottawa elites act like we've broken faith with Canada. And it just isn't that way. When we talk about having a provincial police force, or we talk about having a provincial pension plan, or having more control over our immigration, these are not new things. Everything Alberta is debating about doing are things that already exist in Ontario or in Quebec or both. No one in Canada viewed it as an existential threat when central Canadian provinces exercise their constitutional rights. That's why things have to change, and things do have to change. And Alberta is open to being a game changer within Canada. In the next several months and years, we're going to have very complicated discussions with the federal government. Alberta will do our share on the emissions file. We have actually been a leader on this file for a very long time. We won't agree to destroy the industry, however, that powers our province and our country. We simply will not phase out what instead we can innovate in. And we are innovating in the sector. I am confident that many of the technologies will make all of the difference in protecting the environment, that they will be developed and nurtured in Alberta. And I'll just mention a few. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage. We've been doing that for years. Building out and creating hydrogen. We've been doing that for years. We have geothermal capacity. And most importantly, if we start exporting LNG internationally, we will be able to reduce global emissions of all kinds of emissions, not just greenhouse gases, but you can displace coal and wood and dung as fuel in the lion's share of the world. That's what we should be doing. That's how we will be able to make a meaningful impact on the environment. Our government, yeah. Truly. So our government will try to change the game so that Alberta gets to play on a level playing field. We'll continue to lead and show other provinces and the federal government the importance of good policy as a step to general prosperity. We will compete for the hearts and minds of Canadians as we try to bring them to understand the importance of the decisions facing Canada. We will need your help in this game. We will need the coalition and other like-minded groups to help make the arguments about the importance of affordable and reliable energy. We will need you in the corners with us, and together we can change the game and we can win. Thanks for the award, I appreciate it. Oh, God, look at this, how amazing is that? Do we want to take a picture? Is there a picture?